me coming like an intruder. I give you last a lesson of verbal combat with ill pen maneuvers. Subdue ya when the spoon hit the teacup. You wake up, welcome to my class. Just listen, don't speak. Visualize what you can't see. Call me the rap Bruce Lee. Wing tongue techniques. Let the flow creep like you deep that hasn't eaten for weeks. I've been fast no sleep, but y'all been sleeping on me like hoopers on New York Park benches. Homie, I never left the trenches. Plotting patiently and calm with my ears open listening to these culture vultures, praising worldly sculptures. Man, they wearing skinny jeans and Maybelline. Dipping up so much lean, they dying to reach their dreams. Run around like, hey, Miss Thing. I'm like, hey, yo, son, pass the crown to the king. You dig? Get your hair right, y'all doing it wrong. Boys make the beat, now that's a dope song. Get your game tight, homie, not just games. This is grown man rap. Get your sweet 16. Get your hair right, y'all doing it wrong. Boys make the beat, now that's a dope song. Get your game tight, homie, not just games. This is grown man rap. Get your sweet 16. Y'all rap fans don't have a chance.
And a bottle of water. So
come on, man.
We don't have to go.
You don't need statistics. Guys. You don't need statistics.
Yeah, we don't have to go hypothetical. All we have to do is look at the facts.
See if he had license for his gun.
Yes, we don't have to see it. He did it to a black person.
We don't have to go hypothetical. That's another thing that I think we have to look at. Now we see these incidents, but are these incidents happening in such a high numbers that we begin to uproot and divide our country and believe that this mass reform, I think probably, honest, I'm gonna call it what it is, the dumbest thing that I've seen happen, the most counterproductive thing is a better word for it, counterproductive thing that I've seen happen during all this is a cry to defund the police.
Now, I agree with you on that. I don't think you should defund the police, and I've given some, you know, in another podcast, some practical things that we need to do with the money. Coming from a guy that taught workplace diversity and different things like that in corporate America, I do feel like training and higher pay needs to be for police. Now, here's the thing. You get high quality people with high quality of pay. Just like teachers get CEUs, they get more money. So point. I think as guys get training and they get elevated in their training, and the more training they go out and get, or more training they go through within the department, there should be incentives for that. There also should be incentives for guys that that do not allow, and protection for those that do not allow people to commit crimes, you know, that are other officers. So like if I'm an officer and I'm riding with somebody, like I shouldn't be punished by anybody else for doing my job and standing up and telling my partner to be like, hey, bro, you wrong. I'm going to report you. So I should not be getting in trouble for that. So and I think there should be stuff in place. Stuff in place, whether it's mediation or whether it's something that addresses those issues where those guys can talk or move people around, or also protections for those people that do come out and say, hey, I didn't like what he did. I didn't like what, you know, did. And then that also lets the actual serve and protect mean more than the culture, the cliquish culture. So, you know, I think that's where that at right there. I don't think so. And I think when people mention defunding police, I think what they're more talking about is allocating money, different allocations of funds. And but I do want, I feel like we should pay more and get more training, myself, honestly. Just simply because if you want high quality of people, you got to pay high quality people. You got to pay emotional, intelligent people to apply.
So also from what I heard from the police, they weren't particularly talking of defunding all organizations. They were speaking more like the police, certain places are saying where their funding is bloated. Like New York, I think they had like 1.6 billion saying their funding. So they was like take some of the money from the funding of the police, you know what I mean, and give it to the communities and help them rise above, you know what I'm saying? If your community rises, that means, you know what I'm saying, that crime is going to, you know what I'm saying, go down. If you have more opportunities in the community when it comes to jobs, things like nature, it's going to cut down, you know what I'm saying, on police brutality, and so because people are going to be more focused on making better situations for themselves. That makes sense? I mean, you know.
Oh yeah.
I agree, but at what point do we look at these areas where there's high crime or there's poverty, a certain lawlessness? When do we look at the representatives in that area?
That's
true. We can't, and you know, like we want to. I don't agree with this whole system that is built against us, when a lot of these areas, the people who are in power are Black people.
I won't say that now. And the reason why I say that, okay, let's go look at what's going on with what LeBron having to do with the voting stuff in Atlanta. That is state control. The voting stuff is state control. So you got to also look at the state, because a lot of times the state holds the representatives back. You can say, okay, well, why is all these polling places closed down in Atlanta? And where they only got y'all know how big Atlanta is.
Right.
And they closed down all these polling spots. That's something done by the state. That didn't have nothing to do with their local representatives and stuff like that. Same thing with Flint, Michigan. You know, I'm pretty sure those representatives that was in Flint want to get that water and stuff fixed. But the state, you know, those people that's in charge, the state and federal funds that they're asking for, they're not releasing those funds. They're not, you know, allowing that to occur. And so going back to those places, we're talking about, okay, let's look at redlining. The redlining is not those representatives' fault. Those redlinings are big corps, big banks, and the government, state government's fault. That's not the and if you talk to a representative, like I said, I'm gonna tell you what would probably actually heal that is not even, like, I would even say this, and this is, you know, since they don't want to give people reparations and stuff like that, I would say just Black people that's been redlined shouldn't have to pay taxes for 10 years. If you don't want to give people reparations.
About redline, what exactly do you know to be redlining?
Okay, so redlining is basically what the government has set aside certain type of land where they're gonna tell banks that you had to be, and to summarize it just like this here, you had to be a certain income to be in this certain area. Now, they're gonna charge property taxes in areas that, you know, if Black people try to get out of there, they wouldn't be able to afford it. Then they go to the bank to get a loan to try to get in that area, they won't be eligible for the loan. So they're marginalized to these places where there's very little property tax. Then you build a school there. So most of the school funding that you get, most schools fundings are done through property taxes and land taxes. So when we talk about that and you look at that, if the value of the land is up, most of these red line areas don't have, their property value is very, very low. They're not getting tax dollars for their schools. They're not getting the programs and stuff that they need to uplift their city. And then they're not gonna, then guess what? Do businesses wanna go there? No, they're not. So you don't have the tax dollars from the businesses to keep those communities stable. Then this all leads to the poverty issue. Right. You know, so if you got a bunch of people in an area with limited resources, limited opportunities, guess what they're going to result to? They're going to result to taking things from each other. They're going to resort to hurting each other.
Drug.
You know, crime, and same thing that's going on in Mexico. And that's why I don't understand why everybody loves saying Black community, Black community, Black community. Nobody say Mexican community in Mexico. Nobody say Tijuana community in the country of Mexico. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know,
systemic. That's why it's systemic. That's why it's systemic, because it continues to break down from every area that's really supposed to progress us and not hold us back. We're being held back. Sure. And we're trying to blame the Black people as a culture, the ghettos, the people are the reason why these things are happening. No, and let's not ever say that. Let's get that corrected automatically from the top.
It's opportunity and
no, that's the thing. So there's no accountability. Let me tell you this. If you look at Mexican America, Black America, and we're close to the same poverty rate, how is it then that homicides or crime is committed, what, 7 to 8 times higher in the Black community than in the Mexican community. You can't equate.
No, where you get them stats from?
Where you get the numbers from? Yeah.
I gotta cut you off on that one, bro. Because, bro, have you been to South Central LA?
What?
Have you been to LA? What do you know about MS-13? Like
MS-13.
Seriously.
That's all.
I mean, Texas borders, things of that nature as well. I mean,
you know, I'm like I said, I don't know what the exact numbers is, but it cannot, like, literally.
That's the thing. You look
at it.
If that was the case, then you would see. Okay, if what you're saying is true and the numbers are the same, why do we only see Black crime? Why are we only seeing one side of this paradigm? That's another thing that I think we should discuss.
I mean, because
just like the police brutality, if it happens to white people, which we all know it does, we can't deny that it don't happen to white people. Why, when you turn on the news, do you never see any incidents of that happening?
Systemic. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna go back. Let's go back to we're gonna address one of them here. Okay, the first one is the Black on Black crime. So when you start talking about that has been programmed in everybody's head, just like through history. Think about why they only, like, when you take the U.S. history test, there's nothing in there about Black people. We get delegated 1 month a year, and we get delegated a class, African-American class. Our high school kids don't even take a U.S. history test that have Black figures in there, which we contributed to. The capital allowed us to, contribute. Well, we contributed to us being the capitalist society that we are, because we built the capital in this country through free labor.
Right.
But okay, no inventions, nobody, involved in our, like I've been talking to a lot of white friends, and they were like, man, I'm so behind in history. I felt like I was cheated in American history. And everybody feels that way. Even if we as Black people, we tell them, we feel like we're cheated in that way.
Facts.
So I'm going to now let me make this to this next step, because we've been programmed to put stigmas on Black people and stuff like that. We've been that is a natural program. Instead of us, the only time, like all this time when we've been talking about, hey, what we've been going through as Black people, white folk always say, well, we need to unify. And why you gotta say white? Why you gotta say Black? But y'all love saying Black on Black crime.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't create ghettos through redlining and then say, oh, here's the Black on Black stats right here. And then whenever we point out, okay, well, this is how white people contributed to that. Oh man, we just need to unify. We can't, da-da-da-da-da-da. It's social programming. You know what I'm saying? Right. Why can't we just be American?
Here we go again. I think here we go again.
What?
When to say that it's only white people contributing to the laws that create maybe these areas is.
It was the Constitution. It was the Constitution.
Are there only white elected officials?
It is.
Are there only white elected officials running in this country?
Yeah, 95% of them.
Right. Right. And think about the way laws and stuff get passed. It has to be passed by the majority. By the majority.
That's not us.
That's not us.
I do. Okay, I understand that.
So so here's the thing. And so if I'm a senator or I'm in the House of Representatives, and there's only 10 people in there that have the same initiative, the same knowledge, the same background. Think about it. Just like I shared the other day here, Loving Day. Loving Day was just the other day here. 53 years ago, interracial marriage was okay.
Yeah.
So just think about it. Civil rights. Martin Luther King was killed 53 years ago. So let's think about this. The same people, that age group that is in them making laws were kids then. Were kids. Most of them was kids. So they got this programming. They got this mindset. So do you think they're going to make, so like if the system is already fixed where they're having an advantage, the laws, the this and the that.
Successful.
Yeah. You think they're going to change that?
Heck
you think when
Good point,
ACO,
sir. Good point.
Yeah. So you think when ACO or Bernie Sanders put up a bill or something like that or whatever, like the rest of these folks gonna come along, get along with it? No.
Oh,
no.
Okay, let me say something real quick.
I would hope during this civil discourse is that it wouldn't turn political, but can you really separate what's going on right now from the politics? You can't.
No.
Would you agree?
You can't separate it only because if they were stricter laws to long time ago when cops first started killing black people, I promise you they wouldn't be doing it at such an alarming level now,
right?
Because the penalties would be so strict
so
they
severe.
Wouldn't even want to try to test it.
Right.
See, and that's okay. Although we can agree that you can't always trust statistics and that they can be padded to fit in a certain agenda, we then have to speak on these certain numbers. Because if you say killed at such an alarming rate, then what's the numbers on that?
All right, let me give you that. What you talked about. I want to go back to what he said about the nine.
I'll let you say that in just a minute. It's so easy for me because I don't need numbers now. My daddy and them, back in my father's and mother's days, they probably needed the numbers because it wasn't happening where you could videotape it and the whole world could see it. Mm-hmm. But now that I can see it on a daily basis, a different state, a different human, I don't even need numbers.
Reggie, let me
with names and states.
Reggie, let me get back to you. We just all agreed that video can be manipulated as well as numbers. And we also know that media is state controlled. So if they're only showing one side of the issue, that makes you think. Let me tell you this, I refuse, as a black man in America, to allow what I'm being shown to help trigger and push somebody else's agenda because they want to trigger my emotions as a black man, knowing that slavery is a sensitive issue, civil rights is a sensitive issue. So although we're far removed from that, let's push these things to trigger my emotions.
But the thing that's being pushed are the people pushing it. It's not nothing to do with the other people. We're showing actual footage. You know what I'm saying? Civilization. People out in the street are recording this now, putting it out there. It has nothing to do with it. We can't trust the media or the government because they can't turn the body cams on. Body cams are off. You know what I mean? So we're not getting any of that information.
And I was going to go back to this too. And if it wasn't for the systemic history of what was going on with police brutality, like I said, I grew up 40 minutes away from Philadelphia, Mississippi, where the Freedom Riders were killed. The two Jewish guys and the black guy that came from New York during the civil rights time that was killed by a highway patrolman. Now, the reason why I brought that up is also during the Emmett Till era. So let me, and then I had my grandma and them tell us, hey, like everything was about survival when we was growing up. And because they would tell stories about people that they knew that got arrested and the police said that they hung themselves. You know what I'm saying? Like that,
right.
If you got a grandma that was born pre-1950, you know what I'm saying? That stuff, and here's the other thing. The stuff is, when I go back to programming, that stuff is programmed in our head. Also, it's in our DNA. It's scientifically proven that trauma is inherited too. Just like in the spiritual realm, people say generational curses. That's why I think this hits us as hard as it does. Like, it hits our DNA, and we are very passionate about it because it don't take a lot for that to happen in understanding the whole context and totality of how we're viewed as a person anyway. We get the microaggressions and the overt racism sometime on a weekly basis, and some people get it daily, and
matters where you live.
And so, based on where you live. And so, and I'm going back to those statistics again. Okay, so 9 versus 19. Okay, so you're talking about a population that's 70%, and if they had 19, population that got 12%, and they have 9. Do the numbers by percentage, and that's why I tell people, by percentage, it does occur more frequently in science. I've always been taught through the scientific method, when you do experiments, you go by the percentages. You know what I'm saying? The numbers do matter as far as correlation to the total number that you have. So if there's something, you know, if something happens, if you got, like I said, 70%, so 700, and that happened 19 times out of 700. And then, but you only got, you know, 12% 12 people, and it happened 9 out of the 12 people, or whatever, 12% in this situation. But
the numbers don't lie either. The numbers aren't lying.
With that being said, it's still, do you think it's warranted, the outcry and the passion that we're putting into that low percentage when it comes to
it's not low compared to.
No, it's low in comparison to how many people are in the population.
Well, I can speak comparatively, not compared to other white people getting having to deal with police brutality. Let's compare to Black homicides. Like, we want to say that, oh, people only want to say that to excuse this issue, but it's an issue nonetheless that we don't put this amount of passion into Black homicides.
I mean, well, Black homicide, think about it. If you live in a population that's predominantly Black, you know what I'm saying, you can have more Black homicide. You know what I mean?
It doesn't matter about it's going to happen. It happens in every community. I think based on the stats, white people kill white people more than they kill Black people. And
Black people only white people in your society. Of course, who else would you be killing the white people?
Stat, Black people kill more white people than white people kill white people. But I digress on that. If we look at the amount, it's not that, oh, Black people around Black people, so there's going to be Black homicides. Look at the number, the amount that it's happening.
And this takes me back to the whole thing while we're protesting. Systemic injustice.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Red line. Red line. Wait. Hear me out. Poverty. I've done mission work in Nicaragua, and you can feed people and do stuff in Nicaragua, and they tell us when we went to them slums, they told us we got to be out by night.
Yes.
No matter how much you done for these people are desperate. Poverty. And you live in a society that tells us that our value is found in what we got, who we know, and how much power and ego we got. That's the American society.
American way.
That's not the American way.
I mean,
what?
Money, power.
The American way.
Respect. Money, power, respect.
See, that's what movies and TV will tell you.
No, that's real life.
But looking at just our Black success stories, looking at grandpas that worked hard, dads that worked hard, mothers that worked hard, you were able to see the opportunity for you to become better any way that you wanted to. Now, this is my thing. Because
but how is that? Wait. So you just said something. You just said something.
You just said it. You can see it. You achieved it.
They have the work.
So, and that's what I'm saying. What I mean by wait. Listen to me. Hear me out. Okay.
What's a handout?
Your merit is based upon how hard you work, quote unquote. And then wait. And what you have is based on how hard you work. And that's a myth. That is a total myth.
That's not a myth.
I'm gonna give you an example.
Give me an example.
Work 50 and 60 hours a week. They pay tithes, they
everything.
And we spent most of our life living poor as a joke. Me and my brothers did. And now, my parents were great people, great hearts. If you ever met them, they outworked anybody. My dad was known as the Iron Man on his job because he never took a vacation day.
Never took a day off.
Now, my family according to the American success story, and I went back and looked at a lot of my parents' loans and stuff like that. They got people, did y'all know that there's discrimination against lending laws that didn't come out until the 2000s? I know this because I'm in banking.
Yes,
and
sir.
So they would charge Black people extra higher interest rates on everything. My parents didn't know no better. They didn't know about finances. They didn't know about
needed it.
They just wanted the money.
Stuff.
They needed it.
There's a lot of Black people that don't know about credit score and how to manage that and what they don't know. They worked hard. They were good people. But then also too, when they went out and about, they was judged by the car that they drove. They was judged by the way we were dressed.
Right.
Yeah.
They were judged by the house that we stayed in.
Worked hard, but it's still broke. You want to see? We didn't see it for
and their
labor.
value to people was based on that. It wasn't based on hard work. I can just tell you that right now because I'm gonna tell you, some of the hardest working people that I know
are the brokest.
Yeah. And that's just real talk, bro. Like, and I've seen it, and
I don't see how that equates to a lack of opportunity.
Well, I mean,
we never say the opportunity is not there, but that rolls back to the equation the example I gave you, Calvin. Me and a white person go for the same job. I'm more qualified, more years of experience and all, but he gets the job.
Then listen, we have a law in place that actually goes the other way. I told you that. And we all are familiar with
murder too. We have a law against murder too. But when that's done, people don't go to jail and pay the penalties for those laws. So laws don't matter if nobody's gonna do and put them into play. So they're just writing on paper if nobody's gonna enforce them. Most definitely the people that create these laws so say for our good. If you're not gonna enforce them when the opportunity arises, there is no such law.
And so does that because there's perceived injustices, does that make us above the law?
Okay, now stop. You said perceived. You said perceived like we're making it up. Somebody committing murder against a black man, that's not perceived.
I think that's the great thing about my brother's keeper, because we're all talking about the same issue and we all have different perspectives. And I think that's what's amazing about it. And I think that's what everybody needs to hear is that even though we have different perspectives, these conversations have to happen.
Facts.
They have to happen.
They grow from each other, you know, and teach.
I also feel, and I feel like, you know, going back to that, and you look at, okay, so when you look at redlining and you look at how banks turned out, I'm a banker. I love banking, and that's why I tell people I love banking. But I look at, we had a bad history, and I'm not afraid to admit that. You know what I'm saying? My parents were victim of it. You know, the excess in interest rate. You know, people telling them, no, you can't, you know, because banks make the decision on whether to give a loan to a person that's trying to get a house in a certain neighborhood anyway. So they just said no most of the time. So whenever those districts were redlined by the government, quote unquote, they knew who to give loans to in certain areas.
Yep.
That's what I'm trying to, that's my whole thing. Like people, I tell people, say, you know, what's the responsibility of black on black crime? Redlining. And they think that it's some kind of complex answer. I'm telling you, when you research redlining, you will draw because what redlining created is slums. Yeah. And I'm not talking about where anybody lives, but I'm just saying, they created slums because what a slum is, and that's what they talk about in Central America. The slums, limited resources, people living on top of each other, etc. And guess what happens when you don't have as much opportunity? Because here's the other thing too.
You're part of your environment.
Because of the schools, because of the schools and stuff too, they don't have the knowledge of the opportunities out there. They don't.
They weren't.
You know what I'm saying? And then the way the schools and stuff are set up is,
we have many under the poverty level that obviously there aren't just black. So that's the thing, does that mean that all who are under the poverty level or they're victim of redlining?
No, I wouldn't say that, because think about the people that are under poverty level. The poorest state is West Virginia and Kentucky is a place in, I think, Eastern Kentucky.
Arkansas.
So that's, you know, and that's majority white. But I wouldn't say they're a victim of redlining, because redlining was intentionally done in places where blacks were.
Where blacks were, right? It wouldn't be a place where white people were.
I'm telling you, man, it was one of the slickest, most racist thing that you could ever do, and it was done intentionally.
I'm familiar with gentrification. Is that around the same lines, gentrification?
No, gentrification is basically is the repairment of those cities and kicking the black people out whenever somebody get ready to.
Exactly.
So, like what this is. Yeah. So basically what gentrification is, which actually creates more slums somewhere else too.
More redlining.
Create more of a ghetto.
More redlining.
Yeah, more redlining. So what that does is they come in and they say, I'm gonna build this place back up. But when they build it back up, they're gonna make the rent so
higher,
expensive that the people that actually
stay there
can't live there. They got to, you know, because they don't own the building. And then most of the time the cities are trying to lift up the property taxes. So they go ahead on and sell it to these, you know, multimillionaires, and these multimillionaires, not billionaires, but billionaires, they come in, they buy it for a very low price because the city is like, well, it has low property value anyway. And then they sell it, and then they increase the value, and then guess what happens to the property taxes? Now the property taxes go up. But then what happens within that is that the people that was actually living there can't afford to live there.
They gotta go.
They gotta go. And a lot of those places, they do hire those people to work in those areas, but they can never make enough money
to live in them.
Into those areas.
To live.
That's just,
that's a very good argument. I have to agree. It's a very good argument.